Hello, Oscar. It's Grandpa here, and Moosey. I think Moosey, you're being a bit naughty there, jumping up and down. No, I'm not being a bit naughty. No. So, are you all right, Moosey? Yep. Are you going to say hello to Oscar? Yep. Hi, Oscar. So, hi, Oscar from Grandpa, from Granny. Granny's out doing some gardening. That's lovely. And from Moosey as well. And we hope you and little Annabelle and what are you doing, Moosey? And Mummy and Daddy are well. So we're going to read a little bit more about the Playful Panda. And if you remember, Zoe and Meep there was a crate, wasn't there, which Great Uncle Horace had brought to the enclosure, the panda enclosure. And suddenly a little face appeared in the doorway of the crate. And Zoe gasped as she saw the first cub, now wide awake. Her face and body were as white and fluffy as a cloud. Her ears, arms and legs were black, and there was a ring of black fur around each of her bright, curious eyes. Her black nose twitched, and she scampered out of the crate excitedly. "I think she likes it, don't you?" whispered Great Uncle Horace, beaming. And that's the first panda cub, you'll remember, bounding out of the crate. Oh, that's exciting. Zoe nodded, unable to tear her eyes away from the beautiful animal. Then the second cub peeped out shyly. She was a bit smaller than her sister, with a black splodge on her tummy. And there she is. Look, there's the picture of the second one. Ooh, with a black splodge on her tummy. And Zoe was telling them that this is their new home. And both cubs stared at her in surprise. By her feet, Meep squealed in horror. "Zoe, shush, little lemur," hissed Goose here. Zoe clapped her hand tightly over her mouth as if she could somehow make the words disappear, because, of course, Oscar, she had spoken out loud to the panda cubs. Oh, my goodness, giving the adults, none of the adults know that she has this special skill, do they? Suddenly her heart was racing. She couldn't believe she'd made such a silly mistake. She had talked to the pandas in front of Great Uncle Horace. So this is now chapter 4, A Lucky Escape. Zoe looked quickly at Great Uncle Horace. She had never spoken to an animal in front of another person before, but she'd been so excited about the panda she'd forgotten Great Uncle Horace was there. She thought desperately, trying not to panic. What could she say to explain? Maybe she could pretend she'd muddled up her words. But Great Uncle Horace didn't seem to have heard her. There was a funny smile on his face, but he was still watching the cubs look around their new home. Zoe let out a deep, shaky breath. That was a lucky escape, she thought. I need to be more careful. "Gosh, Zoe, you look very serious," cried a voice from behind her. "Cheer up, sweetheart. This is the best day we've had at Rescue Zoo in ages. I can't believe we've got panda twins." Whoa. It was Stephanie, Sue Lynn's old keeper, her freckled face pink from rushing along the path. Her chestnut brown hair was tied up in a bun, and she was wearing the blue Rescue Zoo uniform with a golden hot air balloon sewn on the pocket. She grinned in delight, crouching down to stroke the smaller cub's soft fur. "Aren't they gorgeous? I don't think I've ever seen such small pandas before." Will, Jess and Frankie all rushed down the path together. Then Lucy arrived with some of the other zookeepers, looking very out of breath. "The zoo visitors must be wondering what's going on," Lucy laughed, hugging Great Uncle Horace. "The animals are making such a lot of noise, and all the zoo staff are dashing along the path as if they're running a race." "This is impossible," spluttered a voice from behind them. I wonder who this might be, Oscar. Can you guess? I think it could be Mr. Pinch. "This is impossible," spluttered a voice from behind them. "2 new pandas, that's twice the money and twice the mess." Zoe turned, her heart sinking. Mr. Pinch, the zoo manager, was standing by the gate, his skinny arms folded tightly. His uniform was crisply ironed and his shoes perfectly polished, but his thin face was as sour as vinegar. Ooh, that sounds horrible. Only horrid Mr. Pinch could be grumpy about such gorgeous creatures arriving at the zoo, thought Zoe. Ah, Mr. Pinch, a pleasure as always, great Uncle Horace called, his eyes twinkling. I see you've come to meet our new arrivals. Mr. Higgins, delightful to have you back, of course, Mr. Pinch added quickly. There he is there, look, there's Mr. Pinch standing there looking grumpy. Mr. Higgins, delightful to have you... Moosey, what are you doing? Mr. Higgins, delightful to have you back, of course, Mr. Pinch added quickly, his cheeks flushing pink. But perhaps we should discuss this before we do anything hasty. I really do not see how the pandas can stay here. 1 cub will be very expensive. But 2? Yes, 2, great Uncle Horace interrupted cheerfully. 2 pandas who both need a home. Remember, the rescue zoo never turns an animal away, no matter what. Mr. Pinch went the colour of a ripe tomato. Do you know what the colour of a ripe tomato is, Oscar? That's pretty tomato-ish, isn't it? Well, no, Mr. Pinch snapped, but the cost. We'll think of something, great Uncle Horace told him, walking over to the flustered zoo manager and patting his shoulder. Let's go to my office for a chat. I know you must have some excellent ideas up your sleeve. Besides, it's time I had a cup of tea and a custard cookie. Come along, Kiki. See you later, everyone. He marched away down the path with Kiki soaring above him. Mr. Pinch shot the pandas a final cross look and then followed, grumbling under his breath. Stephanie jumped to her feet. Right, everyone, let's get this enclosure fixed up for the cubs. The zookeepers set to work. Frankie fetched some fresh wood chippings for the ground, while Jess found a pile of warm, fleecy blankets for the cubs to sleep on. Everyone else swept away the piles of autumn leaves and cut the sprawling ivy off the wooden platforms. Meanwhile, Zoe's mum checked the cubs to make sure they were both healthy. As Zoe held each cub carefully in her lap, Lucy used the stethoscope. You know what a stethoscope is, don't you, Oscar? Because you've got them in your medical kit, where you put them in your plugs in your ears, and then the tube goes down, then you listen to someone's heart. So as Zoe held each cub carefully in her lap, Lucy used the stethoscope around her neck to listen to their heartbeats. There we are, look, you can see there's Lucy with her stethoscope listening to their heartbeats. Fantastic. Then Lucy opened the special vet bag she always carried and shone a small torch into their eyes and ears. They're both perfect, she told Zoe, smiling. This one here is a little bigger than her sister, but that happens quite often when 2 babies are born at the same time. Soon there was only one job left. We need to mend the wooden fence around the enclosure, said Stephanie. Some of the wood has rotted away and the bamboo has grown so much that it's pushed holes right through it. Will and Jess fetched some new pieces of wood and some nails from the zoo storehouse and used them to patch up the holes in the fence. Finally, all the work was done, and the twins' enclosure looked as good as new. Thanks for your help, everyone, called Stephanie, as the keepers left in small groups chatting about the adorable cubs. Lucy gave Zoe a kiss before heading back to the zoo hospital. I've got to check on a poorly raccoon and give some medicine to an aardvark with a sore snout, she said. I don't know, have you ever seen an aardvark, Oscar? If not, you ought to ask Mummy and Daddy to show you one. So an aardvark with a snore snout. That sounds painful, doesn't it? I expect you and Meat will be here all day, said Lucy. Just be home in time for tea. As Lucy set off down the path, Stephanie grinned at Zoe. I think it's lunchtime for hungry panda cubs, she announced. I'll fetch some milk. Will you watch them until I'm back? Of course, said Zoe quickly. She caught Meat's eye and the little lemur chirped excitedly. Being alone with the cubs meant she'd be able to talk to them, with no one else around this time. As soon as Stephanie left the enclosure, she knelt down. The bigger cub was playing happily with a piece of twig, while her sister was quietly watching a worm wriggle along the ground. making you wriggle along the ground just like a worm, Oscar? Not sure I've ever tried that. Hello, Zoe said softly. I'm Zoe and this is my best friend Meep. What are your names? The bigger cub looked up and squeaked in surprise. Zoe giggled. Yes, that's right, I can talk to animals. You weren't imagining it. I wasn't supposed to do it before, though. I forgot my great uncle was here. The cub squeaked again eagerly. Chi-Chi, Zoe said, nodding. That's such a pretty name. What about you, little one? The smaller cub blinked at her, then squealed shyly. May, repeated Zoe, smiling gently at her. We're so pleased you've come to the rescue zoo. We're going to look after you here, I promise. Meep chattered a warning as Stephanie came back into the enclosure. Zoe, do you want to feed one of the cubs? She asked, holding up 2 bottles of warm milk. I know you're an expert. Zoe grinned happily. Yes, please, she said, taking a bottle from Stephanie. She loved feeding baby animals. They are cute, aren't they, Oscar? Carefully she picked up May and held the little panda against her chest. With a tiny squeak, May cuddled up against Zoe. Her fur was so soft and fluffy and she felt very warm. Zoe offered her the bottle and May started drinking the milk happily. Look, there's May drinking the milk happily. Oh, she's so sweet. Stephanie smiled as she fed Chi-Chi. We're so lucky to have them here, you know, she told Zoe. Pandas are some of the most endangered animals in the world. There are fewer than 2,000 living in the wild now. Oh, that's sad, isn't it, Oscar? Zoe frowned. She knew that sounded like a big number, but it was actually very low. There were almost 1,000 people in her school, and that was the same as half of all the pandas living wild in the whole wide world. Why aren't there more? She asked. There are lots of reasons, Stephanie explained. Poachers hunt pandas because they can sell their fur for lots of money. Pandas need to eat so much bamboo that it's really hard for them to find homes with enough plants growing nearby. Plus, pandas don't have babies very often, and twins are especially unusual. Chi-Chi finished her milk and gave a little hiccup. Stephanie laughed. They certainly enjoyed that, she said, tickling the cub's fluffy belly. There we go. So, Oscar, we'll find out what happens after they've had their milk next time we read. So, it's lots of love from Grandpa and Granny and from Moosey. You've been good, Moosey. Yeah, I've been good. Yeah, so it's bye-bye from us and lots of love to you and your little sister and to Mummy and Daddy from Granny and Grandpa. Lots of love, Oscar. Bye. Bye.